1 minute ago, Diddy's secret bunker was broke into. Lil Wayne cries after saving 132 children. The federal courtroom in downtown Manhattan was at full capacity. Press from around the world crowded every available seat, cameras buzzed outside, and a silence fell over the room that felt like the last breath before a storm. On trial, Sean Diddy Combs. The charges: trafficking, coercion, blackmail, and abuse. The unexpected figure leading the charge: Lil Wayne. It wasn't the name anyone expected to see on the witness stand, especially not as the first. But when Wayne took the oath and looked toward the judge, the energy in the courtroom shifted. This wasn't rap beef. This was real. "I'm not here for headlines," Wayne began. "I'm here because too many young ones were hurt and nobody said a thing. Not until now." The courtroom murmured. Behind him, federal prosecutors flipped through files labeled with red tags. Ava Baron Combs, reflection room footage. 132 minors, Miami estate. Wayne's voice didn't waver. "We all heard the rumors. We laughed it off. But some of us started seeing things. Strange invitations, parties that weren't parties, contracts that came with silence." He pointed to a projection of Diddy surrounded by young talent photos, from live streams, parties, and recording studios. Those weren't mentorships. That was grooming, and I say that knowing full well what it cost me to stay silent. Gasps. He described a specific night in 2020. A call came in. It wasn't the police, it wasn't the feds. It was someone close to Diddy, scared. They said they found a room in his Miami mansion, locked hidden, inside young girls. Scared, dazed. One of them, I recognized it. Her name was Ava. He pointed to a still image: Ava Baron Combs, the girl Diddy had once introduced during a feel-good pandemic livestream as his adopted daughter. She vanished after that livestream. That wasn't family, it was optics. Wayne turned toward Diddy, who sat stoically with his lawyers. "That was your power puff. Your silence was louder than your words, but I've got nothing left to protect. I was there. I saw what the industry wouldn't say." Judge Hernandez motioned for calm. "Mr. Carter," she said, using Wayne's legal name, "this court recognizes your testimony as foundational. Please proceed with your recollection of the Miami incident." Wayne nodded. "That night I got to that house. I didn't go in through the front. I went in with a whistleblower, a former guard. He used to work for Diddy. Said there were rooms that weren't on the blueprint. He took me downstairs." He paused. "What I saw looked like a clinic, but not for healing. Cameras on the walls, beds with no sheets. One room had a nameplate, reflection recovery." The courtroom held its breath. "There were 17 girls," Wayne continued, "and one empty bed. The guard said the others were taken already. They moved them when they knew a raid was coming, but Ava was still there, disoriented, silent." He described how he contacted an underground trauma network and arranged for Ava and others to be removed. Quietly, no cops, no noise. Because at that point, he said, we didn't know who we could trust. The projection now showed a second slide: text messages between Ava and a number labeled LW. They were dated months after her disappearance from public view. She had written, "Thank you for not treating me like I was invisible." He wiped a tear, then turned back to the judge. "That's why I'm here. You want numbers. Try 132. That's how many were found on Diddy's properties. NY, Miami, LA. Some from other countries. Some don't even speak, and a few we might never identify." The judge leaned forward. "And do you have evidence to substantiate these claims?" Wayne nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. From surveillance interviews and Diddy's seized devices, the feds have them. They just didn't expect someone like me to come forward, but I did." From the audience, a voice whispered, "Damn." The courtroom was stunned into silence. Lil Wayne had just kicked off the most unexpected criminal trial of the decade. But this wasn't just about Diddy. This was about a system of silence and one man who finally decided to break it. The courtroom air felt heavier as Lil Wayne adjusted the microphone. For years, he'd been cryptic, careful with his words, always skating around certain topics. But today wasn't a song lyric or a backstage interview. This was federal court. And the man sitting across from him, Sean Diddy Combs, was no longer a music mogul in the eyes of the law. He was a criminal defendant. Judge Marlowe signaled for Wayne to proceed. Cameras weren't allowed, but the room was packed reporters from Rolling Stone to CNN, activists, lawyers, and survivors waiting for answers. "I'll keep it straight," Wayne said, leaning forward. "Y'all know the man sitting over there changed music, but that ain't what we are here for. We are here because that same man changed lives for the worse." The gallery went silent. Wayne began detailing a series of encounters, starting with a party in 2012 at Diddy's mansion in Miami. He'd arrived as a guest, but what he saw made him leave early and uneasy. There was this corridor, only guarded access. Said it was private VIP only. I didn't ask questions back then, but I noticed young artists would go in looking excited and come out looking shook. At first he chalked it up to industry pressure, but over time it became a pattern. One that mirrored what Usher, Cat Williams, and even 50 Cent had hinted at. What looked like mentorship was something else entirely: control, coercion, compliance. Wayne told the court he began digging behind the scenes. I started talking to folks. Quietly. Assistants, drivers, even a chef. They were scared. One of them said, "You don't leave Diddy's world, you disappear from it." He pulled out an envelope handed to the court-martial. Inside a USB drive. "This is footage smuggled out by someone I trust. It shows a hallway, no chandeliers, no art, just metal doors with security cams. Not what you expect from a luxury house." He paused, but one of those doors had scratch marks from the inside. Judge Marlowe looked toward the prosecutor's bench. The drive was cataloged and submitted into evidence. Wayne didn't stop there. "I met a girl in 2021. Her name was Mariah. Said she once worked one of Diddy's youth showcases, but the events weren't about music. They were about screening, profiling, picking." The courtroom collectively exhaled. She said they'd get promises, a record deal, a feature studio time. What they got was silence-locked phones and exposure to people they didn't know. Wayne took a moment to gather himself. That girl, she is gone. Found dead in a motel 6 weeks later. Overdose, they said. But she told me before she vanished. They got footage of me. I didn't want to be part of it, but I couldn't leave. A murmur of grief rippled through the courtroom. Next, prosecutors called to corroborate Wayne's story. A former security guard named Hector Torres confirmed the layout of Diddy's Miami mansion. A red zone, he called it, where only a few were allowed to enter and only at specific hours. There were panic buttons in each hallway, Hector said. But they weren't for emergencies. They were for shutting down cams if something went wrong. Lil Wayne returned to the stand briefly for cross-examination. The defense tried to undermine his credibility, pointing to past arrests and lyrics. But Wayne held steady. "I've seen too much to stay quiet, and now I've got backup." He looked toward the gallery where 2 other witnesses were seated, both former assistants' faces shielded by court order. They would speak next. But Wayne had made his mark. Judge Marlowe recessed the court for the day. But the room didn't move. For years, people whispered about Diddy. Now those whispers were evidence. Allegations had become testimony. A trial was no longer a possibility. It was a reckoning. Outside the courthouse, chants rang out, "Protect the youth, expose the truth." And for the first time, Lil Wayne wasn't rapping a hook, he was leading a movement. The next day, tension in the courtroom was palpable. The prosecution had summoned 2 crucial witnesses, former staffers, who had once worked in close proximity to Diddy. Their identities were protected. The court only knew them by their code names, Raven and Jax. They entered flanked by federal agents' faces, shielded behind frosted glass panels. Their voices were altered electronically, but their words cut through the silence like knives. Raven spoke first. I was hired as a guest coordinator in 2018. At first, everything seemed glamorous. We were told to maintain the vibe, keep the guests happy, and make sure phones were locked away during private events. But I started noticing strange requests. She paused, glancing toward the defense table. There were specific rooms upstairs in the New York loft and downstairs in Miami. They were off limits to most of the staff. Cameras were only active at the entrances, not inside. But I once saw Diddy enter one with a group of teenagers. When they came out, one of the girls was crying. Gasps echoed. Raven handed the court a signed affidavit. It detailed multiple occasions where minors allegedly brought in under music or modeling contracts were escorted to VIP mentoring sessions and not seen for hours. I was instructed to delete logs, erase names, remove certain images from internal servers. At one point, I found a list labeled CC files. It stood for Compliance Control. There were names, ages, notes like needs more grooming or excellent on camera. That was when I realized this wasn't management. It was manipulation. The courtroom reeled as prosecutors displayed segments of redacted internal emails, one of which included a directive to maintain visual comfort for a group of special guests during a 2019 4th of July event. Comfort, as it turned out, meant compliance. Then came Jax. A former IT technician, he was responsible for digital systems across Diddy's homes and offices. Quiet, soft-spoken, but meticulous. I was told never to ask about the private servers he began. But one night I had to run diagnostics. What I found shocked me. Jax described an encrypted directory labeled Moments hidden inside Diddy's cloud system. Inside were time-stamped video files. They weren't music videos. They weren't interviews. They were surveillance clips, many showing compromised guests in secluded areas, often intoxicated or unconscious. Some files had metadata linking back to private rooms at mansion parties. The prosecutor asked if minors appeared in the footage. Jax nodded slowly. Yes, in multiple clips. I didn't know what to do at first. I made copies. I thought someone would come forward eventually. When I heard Lil Wayne speak out, I knew it was time. He submitted a USB drive to the court. It was sealed and handed immediately to the FBI for forensic analysis. Wayne, seated behind the prosecution's table, clenched his jaw. The truth was unfolding faster than anyone expected. Judge Marlowe leaned forward. Do these files indicate a pattern? Jax answered plainly. They show a system. This wasn't accidental. It was designed, scheduled, rehearsed. Across the room, Diddy sat motionless. His lawyers scrambled to regroup, whispering urgently among themselves. The prosecution rested for the day, but the media outside erupted with every word. That night, news anchors called it one of the most damning court sessions in entertainment history. Headline after headline, Diddy's secret rooms revealed in federal trial. Lil Wayne's claims backed by explosive testimonies. USB evidence hints at hidden camera operation. Public pressure mounted. Activists demanded action. Social media campaigns flooded platforms with hashtags like Justice Forever, Expose the Gatekeepers, and Where Are the Files? But behind the legal firestorm, another bombshell loomed. Terrence Howard had been subpoenaed, and what he was about to say next would change everything. Terrence Howard entered the courtroom, slowly but confidently. Cameras weren't allowed during federal testimony, but every journalist outside typed furiously, relaying what they could hear. The moment had been building for days. Terrence wasn't just a Hollywood star. He was now a central witness in one of the most high-profile federal trials in entertainment history. He had kept quiet for years, but today that changed. Judge Marlowe signaled for him to proceed. He adjusted the microphone and looked at the jury. I want to make something clear from the start, Terrence said, voice steady. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because the truth matters. Gasps rippled. I met Sean Combs Diddy back in the early 2000s. At the time, he was everywhere. Music, fashion, film. He made the industry look like a dream. He paused, but that dream had conditions. Terrence went on to describe private parties, always invitation only, always with unusual energy. He recalled an event in 2004 where the guests were required to turn in their phones, sign NDAs, and attend what was called reflection hour. It wasn't meditation, he explained. It was a window, a psychological probe. Diddy would have performers and young artists separated and exposed mentally, sometimes physically, to stress tests, all while being recorded. He wasn't the only one who witnessed it, he added. Big names were there, actors, athletes, artists. Some stayed silent. Others left the industry quietly, and some, they played along. Judge Marlowe leaned forward. "Mr. Howard, do you have direct evidence of these events?" "Yes," he said. "I recorded one of them." The courtroom buzzed. "I didn't keep it out of spite. I kept it because I thought maybe one day I'd need it. That day is now." He handed the court a flash drive. His legal team confirmed it had been authenticated by federal agents ahead of the trial. The footage, partially redacted to protect identities, was played for the court behind a privacy screen. Journalists could only describe what they heard. Voices crying, laughter, the sound of a steel door closing, then silence, followed by Diddy's voice, calm and instructive, guiding someone through a compliance ritual. Back in the courtroom, Lil Wayne's expression turned to stone. Howard returned to the stand. That was one night. There were many. He described a time when he tried to walk away. He received messages, then threats. "They didn't want me out," he said. "They wanted me to be complicit." Then he brought up Ava Baron Combs. "I never met Ava," he admitted. "But I heard her name once. A party, a back room. Someone whispered, 'She's the new insurance.'" The phrase stunned the court. Terrence explained that in Diddy's inner circle, insurance meant control, someone you could use to manipulate others or deflect scrutiny. "You weren't a person anymore," he said. "You were leveraged." Defense lawyers objected, citing hearsay, but Judge Marlowe overruled. The implication was clear: Ava wasn't adopted. She was acquired. By now, several jury members were visibly shaken. One wiped away tears. The court recessed for an early lunch break. Outside media outlets exploded with the update. Terrence. Howard testifies, Diddy used people as insurance. New footage places Diddy at the center of ritual-like events. Lil Wayne's claims validated by shocking witness, but the courtroom wasn't finished. After lunch, a surprise witness was called Clara, the former trauma consultant, who had previously worked with Ava at one of Diddy's private foundations. Her identity had been kept from the public due to safety concerns. Wearing a modest gray blazer and flanked by U.S. Marshals, Clara took the stand. "Ms. Clara," the prosecutor began, "how did you come into contact with Ava Baron Combs?" "I was assigned to her case after reports of trauma-related dissociation," Clara said. "She was withdrawn, displayed signs of psychological conditioning, and would frequently repeat phrases like, 'I stay when I am seen, I leave when I am chosen.'" Wayne's eyes narrowed. That was the same chant mentioned by Jax in Part 3, the same one found in encrypted files. She often spoke of a mirror, Clara added, a room where they were told to earn clarity. "I asked her what clarity meant. She said, 'It means forgetting what you came here for.'" Tension filled the room. Clara then dropped a final bombshell, a handwritten note she had retrieved from Ava's bag, before the girl vanished. The note read, 17 minus the bright one. The room still echoes. The mirror still lies. It matched the same phrase from previous testimonies about the secret rooms under Diddy's Miami mansion. "That was the last time I saw Ava," Clara said. 2 days later she was gone. They told me her paperwork had been transferred, but I checked. There was no transfer, no forwarding address, no phone number. She just disappeared. Wayne sat forward. His voice cracked as he whispered, "We need to find her." Clara finished her testimony by confirming that she had sent anonymous footage to the FBI videos, that later sparked Lil Wayne's involvement in organizing the rescue operations with whistleblowers. The court adjourned for the day, but outside the world had changed. Hashtags trended globally: Findiva, Justice from Within, Lil Wayne versus Diddy Mirror Files. This wasn't just about one celebrity anymore. It was about a system, a cycle, a history of silence finally unraveling. And as the night fell over, the courthouse federal prosecutors released a statement. Based on new testimonies and evidence received today, additional charges will be filed against Sean Combs and associated individuals. In the middle of the storm stood Lil Wayne, no longer just a rapper, but a central figure in dismantling an empire of abuse. Day 5 of the trial brought something unexpected, a crowd that wrapped around the federal courthouse by dawn. News vans, protesters, supporters, and detractors buzzed like a disturbed hive. Inside, the courtroom brimmed with tension. The state's case was coming together, and Lil Wayne's involvement had elevated everything from a scandal to a reckoning. As court resumed, Judge Marlowe addressed the jury. Today's witnesses will expand on the patterns we've seen. These are not isolated incidents. The first to testify was Gene Deal Diddy's former bodyguard. A tall man with a solemn presence, Gene walked slowly to the stand, pausing to glance at Diddy. The two locked eyes briefly before Gene faced the courtroom. I saw everything, he began. Not just parties, not just entourages. I saw what happened after the lights went off. He described secret rooms. Have you ever seen a room with no knobs, no light switch? That's not privacy, that's control. Gene confirmed the existence of underground guest suites, more like modified holding chambers. They weren't bedrooms. There was no warmth. Just cold tiles and walls padded from the inside. The room reacted audibly. He then spoke about Lil Wayne. Wayne warned us all years ago, but people weren't listening. He saw it too. He helped one of the assistants get a girl out through a laundry corridor. That girl, she's the one who later leaked the mirror file footage. Lil Wayne nodded subtly from the gallery. Gene wasn't done. He bought toys, medical restraints, surveillance gear. I drove him to the store myself once, and he used a fake ID to pay. He said he left Diddy's service when one girl, possibly Ava, started bleeding from her ears after what Diddy called a reflection therapy. Next came a surprise witness, Jax, a former junior producer under Bad Boy Records. I was brought in as an apprentice, Jax said. I thought I'd be making music, but I was assigned to handle media archiving video backups. That's when I discovered the Gold Room folder. Jax's folder was filled with footage of parties, confessions, breakdowns, and the rituals. They filmed everything. It was blackmail leverage. One clip showed a girl looked about 14 sitting in front of a mirror. She kept repeating, "I reflect, therefore I remain." Behind her, Diddy stands silently recording. The court demanded to see the footage. FBI tech experts confirmed its authenticity. Clips were played in private with media only allowed to report redacted transcripts. "Girl, am I real? Now voice. You are what the mirror says." The impact was instant. 2 jury members wept. After a recess, the prosecution brought their next witness, a digital forensics specialist. He presented metadata from seized hard drives. Between 2015-2020, 847 video files were logged with tags like comp, initiation, and mirror series. The footage was distributed to private encrypted servers across 3 countries. One of those servers was tracked to a shell company connected to Diddy's philanthropy arm. And Ava asked the prosecutor. The specialist confirmed. Her face appears in 6 separate files, always tagged Project 17. Lil Wayne clenched his jaw. Do you believe she was targeted? Yes. Every technical trail shows deliberate focus on her psychological profile. Then came the testimony everyone had been waiting for, Ava Baron Combs. She walked into the courtroom in a navy blazer, shoulders squared, eyes forward. A gasp erupted. Some had doubted she'd ever be found, but here she was. Ava sat and faced her past. I was told I was being adopted. I believed it. I was homeless. I thought it was a miracle. Her voice cracked, but she continued. But soon I wasn't allowed outside. I wasn't allowed friends. I had no phone. And every night I had to stand in front of the mirror and say, I reflect, therefore I remain. If I cried, I was punished with silence. She told the court about the bright one, the girl who tried to run. She vanished. They said she was chosen. But the next day her bed was made again, ready for the next. Ava said she never knew who leaked her footage, but someone saved me. That's why I'm here. Lil Wayne exhaled. She finished, he diddy. He isn't just a predator. He's a system. He used music, fame, hope as tools to trap people. The court adjourned in stunned silence. Outside, the streets of New York were gridlocked. News helicopters circled. Wayne gave no interviews, but he stayed behind to personally thank Ava. The sixth day began with an overcast sky hanging heavy over New York. Crowds stretched for blocks, security doubled, and news anchors took position early. Everyone knew today wouldn't just mark the end of a trial. It would mark the end of an era. Inside the courtroom, every seat was filled. Lil Wayne sat at the front, flanked by federal agents and Ava's attorney. Across the aisle, Diddy sat expressionless, his lawyers flipping through files one last time. Judge Marlowe entered. All rise. He didn't waste words. This court has reviewed extensive evidence, direct testimony, video corroboration, and forensic trails implicating the defendant in a sustained, deliberate, and systemic pattern of abuse. The crimes reach beyond individual acts. They reflect an institutional conspiracy to manipulate silence and exploit. The jury foreperson stood. In the matter of People versus Sean Combs, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts. The courtroom exploded into gasps. Diddy stared forward. No flinch, no reaction, just silence. The judge wasn't done. Sentencing will be determined in alignment with international human rights violations protocols. The defendant is remanded to federal custody without bail. Reporters scrambled outside. The word guilty ran in breaking news tickers across every major network. From hip-hop blogs to global press rooms, the trial consumed headlines. But the real weight lay in what came next. Lil Wayne addressed the press only once. I didn't do this for clout. I did this because too many people knew and said nothing. If I stayed quiet, I'd be one of them. He paused. Ava deserves more than survival. She deserves the truth. Ava, flanked by trauma counselors, was relocated to a protected location. She began working with a nonprofit to support other survivors. Her journal entries, later compiled into a memoir, became a national bestseller. The proceeds were donated to shelters for exploited youth. Gene Deal released his own testimony in a documentary titled The Gold Room Inside the Mirror House. It became required viewing in law schools and advocacy groups. Schools adopted new policies for child representation in entertainment. Behind bars, Diddy's empire crumbled. Partnerships dissolved. Brands pulled out. Music platforms removed his catalogs from public playlists. The cultural reckoning he once thought impossible was now his legacy. 1 month after sentencing, Ava stood beside Lil Wayne at a candlelight vigil for other missing victims. This, she said, holding up a photo of the bright one, is who I remember. Not Diddy, not what he did, but who we were before the mirror. She lit the candle. At that moment, thousands of lights flickered across the park. From across the world, messages poured in, victims, supporters, artists, and activists. One simply read, "We reflect, we remain." The federal database now tags the case as Operation Reflection. Over 40 arrests followed. 3 entertainment executives stepped down. 2 others fled the country. A new congressional bill. The AVA Act was introduced to mandate mandatory background checks for entertainment mentors working with minors. And Lil Wayne. He returned to music, but his next album wasn't about cars, girls, or success. It was about truth, trauma, testimony. Its final track was titled 17 Lights. It featured no lyrics, just a voiceover from Ava. "We don't want fame, we just wanted to be seen, without fear."